Welcome to Sports Insider here on cleveland.com. I'm your host, Chris Fedor. So many things to talk about in the next 30 minutes. If you have any questions, any comments, go to the comment section at the bottom of the post. We'll talk some Ohio State. The Buckeyes getting ready for their first game of the season. They play against Navy this weekend. Former Ohio State running back Eddie George will join us towards the end of the show. Also, one half of our Ohio State beat reporting team, Ari Wasserman, will join us to preview the game and what Ohio State is going to try and accomplish this weekend without their leader, without their star quarterback, Braxton-Miller. Also, we'll talk some Tribe. Indians playing 30 games in 30 days in the middle of that stretch on the road against the White Sox. Zack Meisel will join us, our Indians beat reporter. But first, Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter. She's been all over the news. It came down yesterday. Josh Gordon suspended for the year, and Mary Kay joins us right now on Sports Insider. Hey, Mary Kay.
Hey, how are you?
Doing great, probably better than the Browns at this point. So we'll start right there. Josh Gordon suspended for the year. I would think, Mary Kay, if you made a list of the most irreplaceable players that the Browns have, Josh Gordon would be near the top of that list, right?
Yeah, he would. He definitely would. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tricky. But, at this point, they need to do everything they can to find ways to replace him or guys that need to step up. Hopefully for them, Nate Burleson will come back from his hamstring and pick up a little bit of the slack. Hopefully Miles Austin and Brian Hoyer can get some of that timing down that they don't have right now. And then they're going to have to look on the street for some free agents on Saturday.
Mary Kay, for a couple of months, people were speculating. They were wondering, is it going to be 8 games, maybe 12 games, full season? What's it going to be? Do you believe the Browns themselves are surprised by this result, that he's gone for the year?
You know what? I don't think they're really surprised. I do think that they felt that this was a very possible outcome. I think they were hoping against hope that maybe it would be something less than that. But I think they knew all along that this was probably going to happen. So I don't think they were shocked or surprised, and I know that they're upset about how long it took and all that stuff, but this is how these things go. I mean, these things take time. There's appeals, there's testimony to go through. So they've known since May 9th that they were going to have to do without Josh Gordon, and spending time being frustrated about it is counterproductive.
So if they kind of had a feeling, Mary Kay, that this is the way that it was going to go and he was going to miss all of 2014, did they make a mistake having him run with the first-team offense at times during this offseason?
Well, no, because they didn't know for sure. I mean, I think you have to kind of get him some work just in case. I mean, really, even though they had to know that something was going to happen, you just never really know exactly how these things are going to go. And what if he was going to play? What if they gave him 4 games, 8 games? So I don't really have a problem with that. Plus, I think they were trying to get an idea for their quarterback competition of, give the quarterback somebody to throw the ball to who's really good. I think that may have been part of it. Let's let our quarterbacks look halfway decent while they're trying to win a job.
In the short term, Mary Kay, what do you think this means for the offense? Does it mean more of a role for Jordan Cameron? Does it mean more running? Does it mean more Terrence West because they are going to run the ball more and he needs to take some carries away from Ben Tate? What does this mean?
Well, it does mean that they're going to try to get the ball more to Jordan Cameron and that he will have multiple roles. You'll see him split out wide a fair amount. You will see him go in motion and do all different kinds of things. However, if they don't get a couple of other guys that are good and a threat, then he's going to take the extra attention, and it's going to be hard for him to get open. So they really do need a couple of other guys to step up. Now, Travis Benjamin, he looks like he still has his speed, even though he is coming off of a torn ACL. He still looks really, really fast out there. So he can stretch the field a little bit if they can get him out there and keep him healthy. He's still raw as a receiver. He's still learning. Mm-hmm. He's almost still like a rookie himself in some ways. But he's at least somebody that can get out there and maybe put a little bit of a scare into a defense. Charles Johnson, again, coming off of an ACL. Nobody's really 100% the next year. And these guys are young and inexperienced. But you know what? They're going to have to grow up really, really fast if this offense is to get anywhere this year.
The report came out today, Josh Gordon exploring the possibility of playing in the CFL. Mary Kay, the Browns are not going to allow that to happen, correct?
You know what? It's a moot point because he's not allowed to do that per the CFL rules. They have a rule called the Ricky Williams rule. They closed the loophole. They're not allowed. They do not accept NFL players that are under contract and under suspension. So it's a moot point. Even though he's considering it, it's not permitted.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter, our guest here on Sports Insider on cleveland.com. Still to come, we'll chat some Ohio State. Eddie George on the way, Ari Wasserman, Zack Meisel as well. Mary Kay, a lot of fans have voiced frustration about just how the Browns handled the wide receiver position this entire offseason. Some fans wanted Sammy Watkins in the draft. Other fans wanted the Browns to be more aggressive, maybe in a trade for Andre Johnson or Stephen Hill or something along those lines. They just look at the wide receiver depth chart, and there's not a lot of confidence from fans. Do you believe their criticism for how the position looks right now is warranted?
Well, if you remember, the fans wanted the Browns to draft Trent Richardson too. That was a huge thing that the fans really wanted. So you cannot run your football team based on what fans want. And when they looked at that first round, what they did with their first pick there, they felt it would be better for them to pick up a cornerback that they really needed and wanted, and also to pick up a first-round pick for next year, which is might shape up to be a very, very high pick. So we will see how that plays out. We'll see how the fans feel, next year if the Browns have two very high first-round picks and what they do with that. So it's going to take probably 3 years to figure out how this all went down. I think their feeling on it was, we can find a couple of good receivers. Let's gather that other first-round pick in the event that they needed to get a quarterback next year. They didn't know they were going to end up with johnny-manziel at that point. They were probably thinking, you know what, if we have to, we get our quarterback, go for Marcus Mariota or somebody next year, and they would have been, and still will be poised to do that in the event that they need to. So let's see how everybody feels about this move 2 or 3 years from now.
Mary Kay, do you think the Browns can learn anything from this experience with Gordon, something that can help them in the future? Could they have done more?
You know what? I don't think so. I think everybody's tried to really help Josh Gordon. I do think that Josh did have a good support system around him last year, and I do think that he might have been a little bit lost when Scott Turner, North Turner, Rob Kaczynski were fired. I think that was hard on him. I think he developed trust in them. And when there was that transition period, he didn't know the new staff yet, and all of his people were gone. I think there was this period in there where he floundered a bit. So I don't think there's anything more that they could have done to help him under the circumstances, and I do think it's good that they're taking an active role in making sure that he's got good things going on during the suspension. Now, Josh doesn't necessarily have to do the things that they're trying to put in place or help put in place, but, they're trying to help make sure that he's got a support network and any type of treatment if he needs it.
Do you expect him to play for the Cleveland Browns in 2015, Mary Kay?
You know what, I'm going to say yes because right now you're only looking at about a 4-month sort of suspension. And I think if Josh does the right things in these 4 months, I think he can come back. And, I think that he can get it together and play next year. I think it was, great news that he's able to possibly apply for reinstatement much sooner than August 27th of 2015. Now, we don't know yet for sure. They're going to decide that after this season. But if he does everything right and really demonstrates that he's on the right track, then, there's a chance that they'll revisit this in January and say, okay, come on back and let's get going here. So, it just all depends on what he does between now and January. And, I don't think the DWI conviction, will help his case at all. They might make him wait a little bit longer because of that if he gets a conviction on that. That's in November. Because when they do take into consideration any substance abuse issues that happen. Now, this was, of course, before the suspension. This happened, obviously, in July. But still, I think it might be a little factor where they say, look, let's take another month or two here and just make sure you're good to go.
Final preseason game tonight. It's against the Chicago Bears at First Energy Stadium. How do you expect the Browns to handle things when it comes to starters playing? How much do we expect to see Brian Hoyer? And then how much are people going to see of Johnny-jamboogie?
Well, you know what? Brian Hoyer is going to start the game, and he will play about a quarter. Johnny will then come in and play the second quarter, maybe into the third, depending on how the game is going. And then there's a chance Rex Grossman will play this game, and Connor Shaw, and those two guys will probably finish out the second half of the game. And I think that's significant because I think they have to decide, is it worth keeping Rex Grossman around, or do they kind of go with two quarterbacks and put Connor Shaw in the practice squad? I think that's one of the bigger decisions that they have to make heading into Saturday. So I think you'll see a fair amount of both Brian and Johnny, and that makes the game at least interesting tonight.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter. Thanks so much for joining me today on Sports Insider.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Check out all of her stuff on the homepage, also cleveland.com/Browns. She's been all over the Josh Gordon suspension, gone for a year. So it's a huge hit to the Browns offense. We're talking about a guy who, if you look at his first 2 seasons in the NFL among wide receivers, he's number 3 since the merger, behind just Randy Moss and Jerry Rice. So that's the kind of company that he is in. An emerging star, and the Browns going to be without him for all of 2014. Ohio State going to be without a key player this season as well. It's quarterback Braxton-Miller. That means it's redshirt freshman jt-barrett making its first ever start for Ohio State. It's happening this weekend against Navy, and Ari Wasserman, our Ohio State beat reporter, joining us on Sports Insider. What's going on, bud?
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So what can you tell me about Navy? How does this Navy team that Ohio State is going to see this weekend compare to the one that put a scare in Ohio State fans a few years ago?
Well, I think it's actually pretty, comparable, if not better. You look at the opponent, and the way you answer this question, in my opinion, is by looking at Ohio State. And Navy's going to play disciplined football. It's the same brand of that triple option that everybody's become so accustomed to seeing out of them for the past however many years. But whether or not Ohio State can beat this team is going to be based on so many different things. A redshirt freshman quarterback making his first start. An offensive playmaker that could step up and prove that he could be reliable for Ohio State this year. Linebacker play taking a step forward without Ryan Shazier. There's so many questions on Ohio State's roster right now at every single position. I mean, every single one except defensive line. And I think that's the most, trying thing for Ohio State to have to overcome heading into this first game on Saturday.
Ari, aside from the big one at quarterback, what's the biggest question that they have to answer for you week 1?
Which other playmaker on offense is going to be a proven entity that can get to the end zone every week? No more Carlos Hyde, their leading receiver, rusher last year. No more Philly Brown, their leading receiver, and no more offensive line. They had to replace 4 line starters that were seniors last year. So which player is going to be the guy that not only makes plays for Ohio State but can take some pressure off jt-barrett? I mean, that's the biggest thing. We thought this year Ohio State's offense was going to be just fine because in spite of the inexperience around the quarterback position, Braxton-Miller was good enough to lift everybody up. But now you're adding inexperience to inexperience. So my most, outside the quarterback, if you ask, my most important thing is which offensive playmaker, skill position player, like Dontre Wilson, Jalen Marshall, Ezekiel Elliott, Curtis Samuel, which one of those guys is going to come out and prove that he's ready to be a main option for this team this year?
Ari, what do you expect from Barrett, and what do you think Urban Meyer and the coaching staff expects from him?
I think that I expect a quarterback that comes out and doesn't make a ton of mistakes. I mean, he'll make the freshman mistakes, he'll miss reads, he'll underthrow, all that stuff, but doesn't make any huge mistakes. I'm not expecting anybody who's super talented, but is talented enough to escape the pocket and keep a play alive. But the way they've described him the entire time is as a distributor, so I'm expecting somebody who doesn't leave the pocket much, who can, hand the ball off efficiently, I know, as funny as that sounds, and not miss the play call, and, get short, quick timing routes down and help Ohio State move down the field based on the athleticism and the depth of their talent, which will be, much deeper than anybody they face this year outside of Michigan State, maybe. So what I think he needs to do is play within himself, play like a freshman in the sense that, there are other people around him that are going to have to lift him up and just kind of play within the system. It's not going to be a Braxton-Miller type, 3rd down and 6, and somebody blitzes the left side, hits him in the legs, he escapes and runs for 40 yards on the sideline. That's not going to happen. He just has to stay within himself and not force anything, I think.
Ari, to you, what's the toughest game on the schedule aside from Michigan State?
Virginia Tech, week 2. And I don't know if that's because Virginia Tech's the second best team they play or because it'll be the most tough circumstances for this Ohio State roster. I mean, this week is tough enough. I mean, I honestly think this is going to be a close game for Navy this week. So even if they get by Navy, coming home with all these young, unproven players and playing against a Virginia Tech team that has one of the best defenses in the country, I think is going to be a very tough test for Ohio State. I really do. I mean, I actually have a feeling they might lose that one.
I know you make your predictions every single week on the game. Do you expect Ohio State to beat Navy this weekend?
I do, yeah. We'll release ours tomorrow, but, since you guys are all cool enough to listen today, I'll let you know. I think that Ohio State's going to be in a close game in the third quarter. I haven't decided what the score is going to be, but I think Ohio State will be maybe 7 points or 5, 6, 7 points ahead in the third quarter, and people will be wondering what's going on. And then I think just Ohio State's depth and athleticism that, they recruit at every position is just going to outlast Navy. And they can add anywhere between 7 and 10 points. And I think the score I'll go with is 31-17 or something of that nature, right around the 14.5-point spread.
All right, Ari, good stuff, man. I appreciate you joining me today on Sports Insider.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
There he is, Ohio State beat reporter Ari Wasserman joining us on Sports Insider. You can check out all of his stuff. Also, Doug Maurice, in a new edition, is going to be coming to Ohio State's reporting team as well as they get ready for their game against Navy on Saturday. Joining us now in studio here on Sports Insider, my man Zack Meisel, as the Indians in a tough stretch here, 30 games in 30 days. The schedule just kind of worked out that way, Zach.
It did, but don't you want to talk about your boy Johnny-Jamboogie first? I finally watched the video and I'm on your side.
Yeah, what do you think?
It's nice to see him show a little personality and kind of, we're not just talking about football and the playbook and whether he knows that. We're not talking about his off-the-field exploits on the weekends. We have personality and something funny that everyone hopefully can agree on is enjoyable instead of this separation on his personality.
I always wonder, how do you not like a guy like that? He's flashing up the money sign, which is fun. Football's supposed to be fun. Football's about entertainment. Sports is supposed to be fun. People taking things way too seriously. He's doing little arm circles. He's doing the money sign. This guy's my favorite.
I think we're at the point in society today where you have to prove yourself on the field before you're allowed to have any personality or a social life or anything like that.
Speaking of somebody without any personality, Corey Kluber, he's now lost 2 straight starts. What the heck is going on?
First of all, you'd be surprised. Everyone in the clubhouse, no one has seen it ourselves, but he is supposedly the prankster and the main guy who's pulling all the jokes. So he does have some personality. Yes, he's lost 2 straight, but he's pitched really well in both. Mm-hmm. And then Terry Francona has said it himself. If that is Kluber not at his best, I think you'll live with that. It's still a quality start every time he goes out there. It's a matter, at this point, the starting rotation's been great for about 2.5 weeks. They've had a stretch where in 15 games, they've had 13 times the pitcher has held the opposition to 3 runs or less. I mean, you can't ask for anything more than that. It's all about the offense now. You know you're going to get good pitching from the bullpen. At least right now, the starting rotation's there. They've got to get some hits, and you can't just wait for David Murphy to come back. Ryan Rayburn and Jason Giambi probably aren't going to be the answer. So it's all about those guys in the lineup. Jason Kipnis producing the way he can, Carlos Santana, and they're kind of just waiting on that.
How impressed have you been with some of the young guys? Zach Walters comes up. His batting average is awful, but he's hitting big-time home runs. He's been put in some big spots, and he's delivered. And Tyler Holt, with his glove out there in the outfield. When Murphy went down and Swisher went down, people were like, okay, who the heck is going to play? Who the heck is going to contribute? And some young guys have.
Yeah, this isn't an ideal situation for the Indians or for the young guys. I mean, they're growing up on the fly. This isn't easing them into it. They're throwing them right into the middle of a playoff chase. So it is nice to see a kid like Zach Walters not be intimidated by the situation and go out and, yeah, he doesn't know these pitchers at all. They're going to throw him off-speed stuff and mix things up and find his weaknesses, and yet he still can hit for some pop in some pretty critical moments, too. Yeah. Tyler Holt hasn't been afraid of the spotlight either. We've seen him make a bunch of diving catches in right field. We've seen him steal some bases and get some hits. So there's going to be more of that. You're going to get September call-ups, and with all the injuries they've had, the inconsistency, there's no reason why these kids shouldn't be playing. Mm-hmm. And it's very different from last year because you had a veteran squad that was kind of gelling at the right time. Mm-hmm. Now you have pieces all over the place. You have these young kids that, Zach Walters wasn't even in this organization a month ago.
Right.
So it's interesting to see if they can gel similar to the way the team last year did. I think it's a bigger challenge.
There already have been the young guys that have stepped up, but I remember at the end of last year, so many people were excited about Danny Salazar. He calls up and he's put in big spots, and the fans loved him because he was lighting up the radar gun. Is there somebody that fans should expect to see in one of these September call-ups that could have, I don't want to say huge impact on the Indians down the stretch, but could be an igniter for them?
The reason I would say not really is because most of those guys who would be that person are already here. I mean, we've seen TJ House be a part of this rotation most of the year. We've seen Salazar bounce back up and down, and he is going to be a key again, I think. If that rotation is going to be solidified and be able to compete with Kansas City and Detroit, he's got to be that guy that can throw 98 miles an hour and then come back with a breaking ball that is unhittable. So they need him. I mean, we've seen Holt and Walters. I don't think Lindor's going to come up.
Okay.
I think we can say that right now. I'd be surprised if he did. But really, like Jose Ramirez is already here playing. Mm-hmm. I mean, the young guys are here. So I think because of injuries and because of just inconsistency and the fact that they had to trade Cabrera and Masterson at the deadline. Because of that, you kind of expedited the process, and we're seeing those guys earlier than anyone could have expected.
You mentioned you don't think we're going to see Lindor. Is that because the Indians don't believe that he's ready for the big stage, or do you think it's because Jose Ramirez has been pretty good?
A few things. First of all, Lindor's 20 years old. Let's not forget about that. He's young. He's inexperienced. He's only been at AAA for about a month or two, so they don't want to rush him, especially when he's going to come up. You want him to play every day. And Jose Ramirez has done a decent job at shortstop. You're not going to sit Jason Kipnis no matter how poorly he's hitting. So there's not necessarily an obvious spot. I think they would rather just have him come up at the start of next year, maybe wait a little bit. You don't want to start that arbitration clock too early. So I think that's the better situation they feel rather than rushing him up here, letting him play for a couple weeks. I mean, they did it with Asdrubal Cabrera in 2007, but I don't think he was anywhere near the prospect that Lindor is, and he had more time in the minor leagues. So they want to be patient with Lindor. He's got some kinks to work out, both offensively and defensively, and I think he'll do that. He'll come to spring training, and he'll compete for a starting spot.
Heading into the final month, the Indians are playing better. They've won 3 straight series. They've got a chance to make it 4 in a row against Chicago here. They've got some tough games on the schedule too. Kansas City and Detroit, 13 games against those teams. If they don't have the same kind of run like they had last year and they don't get to the playoffs, how are you going to remember this season?
As a roller coaster. One that, not a fun one, not an up and down one, but just like one with like little...
The little baby hills?
Yeah, I mean, they win 3, they lose 3, they win 3, they lose 3. It's been a very inconsistent season, but they've been inconsistent all along that it's really been a consistent season. I mean, they've just been consistently average and consistently inconsistent. And I think they never got on track offensively. They never got on track pitching-wise with the pitchers they thought they were going to have on track. And it's kind of a reset year because now if you look to 2015, you think, well, we have our ace in Corey Kluber. There's not much we can do offensively because we're still paying Swisher and Bourne millions and millions of dollars. We kind of like force ourselves to build around Santana and Kipnis and Gomes and Brantley, which is fine, but you look and you think guys like Walters and Lindor and Ramirez are going to have to be a part of this team moving forward. It's not a rebuild by any means, but it's definitely not what you would have expected after last year and the improvements they made after 2012.
We've got a comment here in the comments section. If you have comments, questions, go to the comments section at the bottom of the post. Hokie Wolf says, another season where the front office failed. Would you see it that way?
It's easy to say that now. I mean, I think the roster isn't very different than what it was last year, and that team won 92 games. I think they've had injuries, and those are excuses, but guys really just have underperformed. I mean, Swisher's been a bust. Bourne has been a bust because he can't stay on the field. Kipnis has had a bad year. Santana's had a down year. I mean, across the board, who has had a really great year besides Corey Kluber and Michael Brantley? Aside from guys in the bullpen, really nobody. So, I mean, I think at the beginning of the year, and you look at all the predictions, everyone was saying this team would win somewhere between 85, 90 games. I don't think anyone was saying they'd win the division or win 100 games, but you didn't think they'd take this far of a step back. So it's tough when you get to July 31st and you're like right around 500. You haven't shown any signs that you can piece together a 20-win month or anything like that they did last year. How can you sell ownership on, hey, let's go out and get this star pitcher or hitter? There's no guarantee that one or two guys at the deadline would have put them over the top. So it's tough to say. It's easy to say that now, but I think they will be instrumental in making some changes in the offseason and making sure that this team headed into 2015 is better equipped.
All right, my man Zack Meisel, one half of the Indians beat reporting team. Check out all of his stuff, cleveland.com/tribe. Thanks, bud. Appreciate you joining me.
I'm going to go watch Johnny-Jamboogie
Let's
again.
go enjoy Johnny-Jamboogie. All right now, joining us, former Ohio State Buckeye running back. I had a chance to talk to him yesterday. Eddie George, he's doing a ton of different things. He's also got a promotion going on with DirecTV, but as Ohio State is getting ready for their game Saturday against Navy, I talked to Eddie about Braxton Miller's injury, the landscape in college football, and some of the big changes. So take a listen. And we've got a special guest joining us right now on Sports Insider, Chris Fedor, with you today for the next 30 minutes. He is a former NFL running back, Heisman Trophy winner, Ohio State Buckeye, as well as TV and movie star. Oh, he's also college football analyst for Fox Sports 1 and SiriusXM, and he's doing something really cool with DirecTV that we'll get into. He is Eddie George. Eddie, did I miss anything in that intro there, bud?
You missed Daddy of the Year. You missed Awesome Husband. You missed, no, I'm joking.
All right, Eddie, we'll get into some Ohio State, some Heisman Trophy stuff, maybe a little bit about Johnny-Manziel as well. But there are some changes in college football this year, one of them being the 4-team playoff. Are you in favor of that?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is what we've been working toward for the last 5 years of allowing the champion to be determined on the field. And, it's another extension of the BCS from where that whole thing was years ago. And now to have this championship series rotated among the bowl games is a tremendous opportunity.
Eddie, do you think this is just the start? Do you think maybe in the future we're going to see an 8-team playoff, a 16-team playoff, or do you think that's a little bit too extensive?
Well, I'm a college football purist, and I like to keep it right at 4. Okay. But if the dollars show that this thing is very lucrative, then you better believe that we're going to go to an 18 playoff. And I think the numbers could possibly work. But I think right now, on the first 5 to 6 years, you're going to see how it works with just 4 teams, work out the kinks, because it's not going to be perfect, and you're always going to have controversy. But when you really look at it, in the grand scheme of things, 8 teams, the 5 power conferences, and 3 at-large teams really make sense in moving forward.
Also, another big change in college football. It happened in the Big Ten. Maryland, Rutgers joining the Big Ten, expanding. What do you think of the expansion?
I think it's an evolution of college football, like we just talked about. With the 14 playoff, these schools are looking for stability. The Big Ten definitely offers that through the network, the tradition. Delaney, the Big Ten commissioner, has done an outstanding job of really establishing the footprint of the Big Ten, expanding, as far west as Nebraska, and obviously, tackling the Eastern Seaboard with Rutgers, and now the D.C. market with Maryland. And I think he's done a tremendous job. Those schools, those universities have great tradition and will help the Big Ten in terms of the sports programs.
Eddie, as you know, here in Ohio, it's all about football, the Cleveland Browns, and of course, Ohio State. They got the rough news last week. Braxton Miller out for the season. How much does his injury change your view of the Bucs this year?
It doesn't shift at all, really. I think Ohio State still has a chance to accomplish all of their goals in terms of winning a Big Ten championship and possibly being one of the 4 teams in the playoff. They're going to do it without their playmaker. I think the timing of it couldn't have been better. There's an upside to this in terms of having the team get ready for the season. jt-barrett's gotten a ton of competitive throws through the spring and now the fall. Now that he's the guy, they can really tailor a game plan around him. And you have to understand Ohio State has a ton of talent around them. Explosive playmakers at every position on the offensive side of the football. Defense will have to carry the brunt of the load, and they can definitely do that with probably the best front 7 in the entire country. And I think these kids realize that they have a chance to do something special, and one guy's not going to hurt them. Now you feel bad for Braxton-Miller because of the work that he's put in over the last 4 years, and he'll probably have an opportunity to come back in 2015 for that season for his final year. But the ball continues to roll, and that's the sentiment and that's the feeling that I get around the facility and the culture at Ohio State, is that they're going to continue to keep rolling and be successful in doing so.
From what you know about Urban Meyer, now that he's got an inexperienced redshirt freshman as his quarterback, how much do you think he's going to change his offense, if at all?
There are obviously some differences between Braxton-Miller and jt-barrett. Of course, Braxton was dynamic with his legs. He can do things that pretty much no quarterback in the country could probably do. But JT is probably going to run a more conservative game plan. They're going to really tailor to his strengths. That remains unknown because we just don't know what he can do, or as a quarterback, only they do, the coaching staff. So I think you're going to see him just be a distributor of the football, not put it on his shoulders to win the games, put it on the playmakers around him to make plays and the defense to come up with the stops. And I think he can find his rhythm, his sea legs, and go there. You got to understand, football has changed over the last 15, 20 years with, passing camps and all the various camps that they have throughout the year. So these kids are now coming in to these universities game ready. And that's evident with Johnny football becoming the first freshman to win the Heisman Trophy. And last season, Jameis Winston winning it as a redshirt freshman as well. So I would not be surprised to see jt-barrett become the next star at Ohio State because from what I hear, they rave about his leadership abilities. He has the intangibles to be a good quarterback. Now he just needs the experience and the opportunity to show what he can do.
Former Ohio State Buckeye Eddie George joining us today on Sports Insider, talking some Ohio State right now with the former Heisman Trophy winner. When it comes to the Big Ten in general, Eddie, coming into this season, do you think Ohio State is the favorite, or do you think Michigan State is after what they did last year?
Even with a healthy Braxton-Miller, I thought Michigan State was a little bit better than Ohio State. They're very confident. The Spartans are very confident. The coaching staff has a great deal of continuity, so they understand the system. The players, they breathe confidence, and they have a great deal of talent. Last season, this time, there were so many questions on the offensive side of football for Michigan State, the quarterback position, receivers, and running back position. Now all those questions are answered, and they're expanding on their offensive system. And their defense is going to be just as chippy as ever. So that being said, I like Michigan State to do it because they host Ohio State, and Ohio State with an inexperienced offensive line before the Braxton-Miller injury definitely gave them the advantage. And I still like Michigan State slightly over Ohio State.
Eddie, when you see Michigan go 7-6, 8-5 in the last 2 years, do you enjoy seeing that? Because after all, it is Michigan. Or is there a part of you that's hoping they turn things around because that's better for the Big Ten, it's better for college football, and it's better for the Ohio State rivalry?
Well, you know what? We need Michigan to be better, and here's why. For so many years, it's been cheer for your own school. In the Big Ten, the SEC. They carry the conference flag. No matter if you talk to somebody from Mississippi State, Mississippi, Alabama, LSU, they all carry the SEC flag, and they carry it very well. Whereas now, as we're going into this playoff system, you need the conference to be strong because there's only 4 spots in 5 conferences that has a shot at it. So if the conference is weak and you have two teams that with one loss, well, if your conference schedule and the teams are weak in the Big Ten, and you're going up head-to-head with the SEC team, well, historically, given what's happened, they're going to give a nod to the SEC team. So you need teams like Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin. Those teams all need to be strong out of conference and within the conference to bring strength to the conference.
Eddie, so much about the NFL and college nowadays. You mentioned it, the evolution of the game. It's about the passing attacks. It's about the quarterbacks. There are a lot of really good ones in college football right now. If you had to pick one quarterback to win one game in college this year, who would you take and why?
Oh, man, I would have to go with Jameis Winston for the simple fact that he's done it. He's coming off of a fantastic Heisman run. He showed poise in the national championship game after going on the banquet circuit and the attention and all that he's gone through. He handled that extremely well, good, bad, or indifferent. And I would definitely trust Jameis Winston to get the job done.
And before Jameis Winston won the Heisman Trophy, it was Johnny-Manziel the year before. Speaking of Manziel, he's here in Cleveland. The Browns used a first-round pick on him, Eddie. He's been in the spotlight for the last 3 years, really, after taking college football in the SEC by storm. And, some interesting things have happened with Johnny off the field this offseason. If he came to you and asked you for advice on how to be a pro, how to be an NFL success, what advice would you give him?
I would say focus on your craft. Win the locker room over as a leader. Be a student of the game and trust the fact that everything else that you want to do outside of football will come. I think he's spending more time on being a celebrity or perceived as a celebrity than winning the locker room and the organization over as being a guy. Because what I've seen so far, does not show well for Johnny being the face of the franchise with the Browns. I think he'll have a fantastic future if he commits to it and if he works at it. If he doesn't, he will be a mediocre quarterback in this league and be out of here before he knows it.
In the NFL, you've been there. You've seen what it takes to be a successful quarterback. Can his particular style of play work in the NFL?
Oh, yeah, we've seen it before. I think Brett Favre has demonstrated that. It reminds me of the Jeff Garcia. But the thing about Johnny is that he has to understand that his improv is not going to work as well in the NFL as it did in college. There are guys that are defensive ends that are faster than he is. And I think he's found that out pretty quickly, that you've got to understand the nuances of the game. You've got to learn how to manipulate a defense. But first and foremost, you've got to become a master of the offense. And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of diligence. And, if you're out in Vegas, living a life in the off season, which is all fine and dandy, and you hadn't done anything in the NFL, you've got to master your craft first. So we have to wait and see how that all pans out.
Eddie, I talked in the open about all the great things that you're doing. Of course, college football analyst for Fox Sports 1, Sirius XM, but you're also doing something really cool with DirecTV. Talk about your involvement with DirecTV.
Well, DirecTV is doing a really cool thing for students around the country. They're doing it with various universities, 10 universities, Ohio State being one of them, and they're offering the NFL Sunday Ticket for students. It's now streaming where you don't have to worry about getting a satellite. And they're offering this at $149. So after you're finished watching all your college games on Saturday, you can watch your favorite NFL teams on the NFL Sunday Ticket, and you can go to NFLSundayTicket.tv for all the information, because every game, every Sunday, in your dorm room or your frat house is awesome. And for those fantasy lovers that are out there, I know you probably have a fantasy team, you can also go to the new DirecTV Fantasy Zone, which is like the red zone for fantasy players. So it's a really cool deal at an awesome price point. And DirecTV, I can't live without it because it's on my iPhone. I absolutely love it. I don't miss a single game. I'm up on everything, and I beat all my friends in my betting game. So that helps me out.
Eddie, I'm right there with you. I've been bouncing around from apartments the last 4 years, and when my girlfriend and we were looking for our next one, I said, wait, we've got to have some kind of setup where I can have DirecTV, that satellite can be facing the right way, because I need the Sunday ticket, man. I've got 4 fantasy teams that I have to pay attention to.
Exactly, man, and it's all going to work out. Go to the new DirecTV Fantasy Zone for that channel for your fantasy team, man. You won't miss a thing.
Former NFL running back, Heisman Trophy winner, Ohio State Buckeye, TV and movie star, college football analyst, and all-around good guy. Eddie George, thanks so much for joining us today on Sports Insider.
Thank you.
Again, that was recorded yesterday, so it would have been nice to get his thoughts on Josh Gordon being suspended for the entire season. But good stuff right there from Eddie George, talking Ohio State, Braxton-Miller, college football in general, and a little bit about Johnny Manziel. So thanks to Eddie George for joining us today on Sports Insider. Thanks to Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, for joining us. Ari Wasserman, Zack Meisel, thanks to all of you as well. Your questions, your comments, we do it every single Thursday right here on cleveland.com, starting at 11:30. We'll talk to you next week here on cleveland.com.